Mother Knows Death, starring Nicole and Jemmy and Maria Q. Kane.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Mother Knows Death. We have lots of news stories to get into with you guys this week. Obviously, by now, we've all heard about the horrific school shooting in Minnesota. Well, a bullet fragment has been found in one of the children who went viral after saying his friend laid on him. So we are going to talk about that. We'll also get into another viral moment captured on film this week at Hershey Park, an update on a story we brought to you last week about a mother who killed her children and her husband, then herself, a family that was awarded nearly $1 billion because of hospital negligence, high cocaine levels in the water in a fancy beach town, and we'll get into this really gruesome, bizarre story about a funeral director who was taking babies home. Then we'll finish up the episode with your questions. All that and more on today's episode. Let's get started with this horrific Minnesota shooting. I don't even really want to talk about it. We've been avoiding a lot of these mass shootings because they're just so scary as a parent and just as a human living in America. So, but I think that this particular part of the story has interest.
Yeah, I mean, we got into this in our YouTube live, more in discussion about it on Friday, but we talked about it for about a half hour and we just got to a point where we were like, this is so sad. We just don't want to keep getting into it and we can't possibly cover every single one that happens. But what we covered on the YouTube was just the basic facts about what went down and then this manifesto from the shooter that had been posted online and how disturbing that was. And of course, we have to focus on the young victims, who was 8-year-old Fletcher Merkel and 10-year-old Harper Moisky. They were killed in the incident. 18 others, including 15 kids and 3 adults, were injured. So one kid, Weston, he's in 5th grade. He has gone viral on the news and talked about how his friend shielded him and ended up getting hit. And as part of the interview, he was saying he thought he had gunpowder on his neck, but that ended up being a bullet fragment that just missed a vital artery.
Yeah, so I don't know exactly how that went down as far as them bringing him to the hospital, but he did, I would assume that interview wasn't directly after the shooting occurred, right? It had to be sometime later. So there was some point that they decided to bring their son to the hospital to get checked. And if he didn't have anything, he had to have some kind of an entry wound of some sorts in order for the fragment to get inside of his body. But what happened was when they did imaging, they saw that it was within millimeters of his carotid artery, which, as we know, is the largest artery that is bringing blood right from the heart to the brain. And if that gets severed in any way, a person can die at the scene just because of massive blood loss. So he's just extremely fortunate to have survived this and still had to get surgery to remove this shrapnel metal fragment from his neck. But luckily, it's not going to cause him any long-term complications.
It's just horrific that, this kid already has to go through this. And obviously the full bullet didn't go in his body, thank goodness. But, he still has to get surgery. He still has to go through the trauma of being in the room that day, the trauma of his friend shielding him and getting shot as well. It's disgusting to even think about.
Well, the kid that was sitting next to him is one of the children that got killed right next to him. These kids, that's the worst part of this whole story. I was saying this on the YouTube live that I felt like the most horrible part of hearing this story is that kids are talking and one of the kids said that they didn't know what to do because they had prepared for this if someone came into their school and shot them, but they weren't prepared for church. They didn't have any drills in church.
And well, I'm sure that's going to change
and just
now.
And my kids today, even dropping my kids off at school today, we were talking about there being all this grass that wasn't utilized. And my kids are like, oh, yeah, we go out there when we do shooter drills and bomb drills. It's just why is this the world that we're living in right now? So whatever. I don't even want to talk about it because it's just talk and nothing ever gets done. from both sides, really. It's just so frustrating, and we're just going to hear about it again in a couple weeks, and then we're all going to be enraged, and it's just like a horrible cycle of abuse. So we're wishing all of those children well. It's a shame that all of these kids have to deal with this. I mean, this isn't the only kid that's undergoing surgery to remove a bullet from their body. It's absolutely terrible. And like, how do you even go on after this? I don't know. But let's go move on to a little an equally as disturbing thing, maybe, but a little bit lighter as far as this video that was going viral. It's almost unbelievable. I watched it so many times because you're like, what would happen if you were just sitting there and you saw something like this?
Yeah, so at Hershey Park, this kid got separated from his parents, somehow entered a secured area, and was later seen by many videos taken walking around on the monorail tracks at the park.
It's such an outrageous video to watch. You just can't even believe that you're looking at it with your eyes. And the coolest part is that this guy that was there, this dad, saw it and just like somehow, like within seconds, got to the roof of a nearby building and was able to climb up on the rail and get this kid. Now, my first thing when I was watching this is obviously this kid's, how old's this kid? Like 5 or 6 years old?
Yeah, young.
He's a little kid. So obviously, just think about it. If for those of you that haven't seen the video, think about like the monorail system at Disney World. It kind of like looks like a similar track to that. And so it's obviously it's very high up. And you're thinking, okay, this kid is walking on this. It's very thin. You're just afraid that the kid's going to fall in general, not even knowing like why a child would be up there by themselves anyway. But my other concern was the guy going up there, because typically these things have a third rail that is the electricity source for them to move. And that you can get electrocuted if you go near one of those things. I don't know if this particular train had a setup like that, but it has to move somehow, right? And luckily it was off and not working that day. So hopefully that's why it wasn't on. But people should definitely not be going anywhere near that thing. So the kid, I just was thinking, oh my God, this kid's going to get electrocuted. This guy's going to get electrocuted. Like, it's so scary and really kind of unacceptable how it all went down.
Yeah, because the parents were saying they reported him missing around 5 o'clock, and this whole thing went down over a half hour. That's a long time for a child to be missing.
But,
think about that.
But like Hershey Park put out a statement, and they didn't really, it just didn't really seem like they
were accepting the blame for it. They weren't taking responsibility for a child being able to access a secured area so easily and get on a train track.
They say like the child was missing only 23 minutes.
That's a long time.
They said that in a statement. And then they said, quote,
long time.
Right?
Yes.
That's what I was thinking. And then it says, quote, "We are grateful for the vigilance of our guests and the swift response of our team." No, your team didn't do shit, dude.
No, a good Samaritan climbed up on a roof, then climbed up on the rail and got
maybe
the child.
They got people together afterwards and stuff, but like the team, what did the team do exactly? I don't really know, so whatever. But we're remain committed to maintaining highest level of guest safety throughout Hershey Park. And then it says it's reviewing how the boy was able to access the closed monorail area.
Well, I was thinking about this all the times we've been to Disney, right? Like, how are they fully securing that area? They can't fully shut it down. It's an open space. They just put a little chain over the walkway, right?
Of course, yeah.
So what are they doing to really secure the area? I mean, kids can climb, you know?
I'm just more disturbed because what if it was working? Not only the electricity being worked on and that just being a risk, but just a moving car like that. Like the monorail car can't just like stop like that.
Well, I guess the argument is that if it was working, there would be so many people around that the kid wouldn't have been unsupervised and able to get on the track for so long. But it's just ridiculous in general.
Yeah, I mean, this guy should get all of the credit. All.
The
I
theme
mean,
park absolutely should not be getting any of the credit.
I was sitting there thinking, like, if that happened to us, that would be something that Gabe would do. Like, he would 100%. I mean, think about that. Most people wouldn't do something like that.
No, not at all, because they don't want to be
I'd be
involved.
scared to climb up on a roof, let alone. I mean, he just went up there and grabbed that baby like it was nothing. Not scared of heights, nothing. It just was amazing.
Well, did he also know that the train wasn't running?
No,
Because
that's what
that's
I'm
a fear
saying.
as
He
well.
probably didn't know that the electricity wasn't on either. Like I mean, it just was like an instinctual thing that he did, and you just watch it. But like, I, I'm kind of disturbed by this in a way. Ultimately, I guess parents are in charge of watching their kids and stuff, but
Yeah,
like, I don't know, it just kind of bothers me.
as a person who was lost at the pumpkin festival at 4 years old, I would say it's Mama will know, and she's gonna be upset for us bringing it up. And I'm sure we've talked about it on here before. But it's as simple as you're in a busy space, a kid could turn around. It doesn't necessarily mean you're a shitty parent, but like
No, yeah, no.
the point that they're trying to say it was only 23 minutes. I mean, on another episode this week, we're going to talk about the influencer Emily Kaiser, whose son drowned. He was only, if you want to use the word only, out of his father's sight for 7 to 9 minutes. And look how that ended up.
Yeah,
So to say
exactly.
only 23 minutes, only 23 minutes is an extremely long time for a child to be missing. 30 seconds is a really long time for a child to not be in your sights.
So anyway, I mean, this all ended well, thank God. And this is going to be, I mean, we talk about this in the grocery room sometimes, because sometimes we have these outrageous accidents that happen to kids where it's like the scariest thing ever, but they end up surviving, and then you think about when they're older and then bringing it up. I mean, this is on video. Imagine bringing this up to your kid when they're 17 years old and be like, "Oh, remember that time you went viral for being on the monorail and someone saved your life," like, and every news source was talking about it. It's just it'll be funny in a couple years. Just right now, it's a little bit of a sore spot, I'm sure.
Is this decade's balloon boy incident of
That
sorts?
that thing was outrageous. We need
That
to
was
revisit that
outrageous.
story at some point.
Well, a Netflix thing just dropped about it, and Ricky never heard of it, which I just couldn't believe. And then I was like, well, the parents like allegedly made it up, right? It's a good hour show, but yeah, I agree with you 100%. Okay, last week we talked about this mother who killed her husband and 2 of her 3 children who were 8 and 6 years old before killing herself. The toddler was unharmed, and he's currently in the care of other family members. And we went over that prior to the deaths, the husband had been diagnosed with brain cancer. I think in that original conversation, we were speculating as to what happened, as far as, was it some postpartum thing? Was it just being overwhelmed with the diagnosis of the brain cancer? Some of the grocery members had pointed out that it could just be, a lot of people are caretakers and it's incredibly overwhelming and they could go through deep depression because of that. Well, now it turns out the mother was accused of stealing over $600,000 from her work just a week before.
Yeah, so obviously this has a huge impact on the story, correct?
Well, yeah, and I say a week before, so a police report was filed a week before, but she had only been accused a short amount of time before this went down, and then she wasn't providing the records to her boss or not giving any information. Finally, she turned over bank records, which they said were clearly doctored, and then they filed the police report, and then a week later, the murder-suicide happened.
Yeah, and from a business owner perspective, it kind of sucks for him, because he knew that her husband had just been diagnosed with brain cancer and she had little kids and everything like that. But at the same time, she stole $660,000 from him. Like, I'm sorry, like, I don't care if I mean, have compassion for people, but I'm not going to just let someone steal money like that from me because their husband has. And actually, we need to mention that this money was stolen before her husband was diagnosed with cancer.
Well, I was just going to say that. So she started writing herself personal checks in 2023, which they were saying was well before the husband was diagnosed with cancer. So she had just been doing it anyway. And then when they confronted her with the information, she just offered no explanation at all. It took weeks for them to get any bank records from her, which they're saying were clearly doctored. And then they felt they had no choice but to file a police report, which is a shitty position to be in as an employer, because obviously you want to trust your employees. And then, like you're saying, they know she's going through this horrific thing in her house, but you can't just let somebody steal money because they're going through something.
And the weird thing is that she worked for a chicken wing company. It's not like they make billions of dollars and it's like, oh, I'm just gonna skim some off the top like an Office Space situation, like just
Yeah.
fractions of a penny. No, like $660,000 over the course of 2 years is a noticeable chunk of money missing that people would notice.
Yeah, so it seems like they were going through with an accountant in June and realized this chunk of money missing and that it was going to her. So that's when they confronted her. And this boss still is remaining in a positive. I think he still looks good at the end of this because he's saying at this point he doesn't even want the money back. He just wants it to go to the surviving child.
Yeah, which is really nice. I mean, he
Yeah.
probably feels he might feel a little terrible about bringing this up because obviously it might not be the only reason that she did this, but she might have felt like a compounding my world is ending kind of a thing. And
But
that along with the cancer, but it does make more sense now. I mean, obviously if your husband gets diagnosed with cancer, we were talking about this last week. If your husband gets diagnosed with cancer and you have little kids, it's terrible, but like life will go on. And some people just get really depressed about it or whatever. But like now it kind of makes a little bit more sense why it was so drastic.
with the facts we have in front of us at this point, this guy cannot blame himself for this event happening. I mean, she was
No.
doing something wrong for years, and it's not like she felt like she had to steal the money to help pay for her husband's cancer. As established, she was doing it beforehand.
Exactly. Like and that still isn't even right, but at least you might say, okay, well,
You
she was
understand a little more, but it's still
Yeah.
a crime.
It's like, listen, she's kind of being a scumbag. Like it's the bottom line. Like she's dead, whatever. Shouldn't speak about the dead, but like that's what was going on, and she created all like that problem, stealing money in general, but just like she wasn't even doing it good. Like you just can't steal money from people like that, and they wouldn't realize it because $660,000 over 2 years, $300,000. Like you think somebody's not going to notice that much money's missing? And then
Well,
it's all
yeah.
like a paper trail.
This isn't like
It's
100
just
years
dumb.
ago where you could like
Exactly. Like
kind of
the whole
get
entire
away
thing
with
is
that
just
stuff.
bizarre. And then on top of it, which is actually interesting too, because assumingly this couple is just wasn't what did she do for a profession?
The
They-
wife?
Yeah, didn't we talk about that last time that because we were talking about like one of them not working or whatever. But regardless, let's just assume that they're average middle class income people, right? What like her bringing over the course of 2 years an additional $600,000 into her life, untaxed, by the way, which is like a person making over $1 million. Like her husband, her family, like nobody noticed that she had all this extra money.
Well, we don't know how she was spending it, I guess, at the
it's
end of
just
the day.
because why would she steal it to stash it away? Like it's just weird. The whole thing is just is fishy, you know.
I mean, clearly there was a lot of issues going on because
Well, yeah, obviously.
you wouldn't, a normal person would not steal from their employer at all. We're not talking about stealing like notepads like I stole from your house yesterday. Sorry. But, like this is a lot of money. So you have that going on, and then you have this horrible situation with the illness, and then you think the only solution is to kill your whole family?
Yeah,
It doesn't make any sense at all.
no.
This episode is brought to you by The Gross Room.
Guys, this week's celebrity death dissection was on Lonnie Anderson, and she had a little bit of a rare cause of death. She had a tumor called a uterine leiomyosarcoma, which had metastasized. So we talk about all about what that would look like, what symptoms would present, and just related to a common condition that women are really familiar with, actually. And this week's Forensic Friday, we talked about fire effect on the brain, and we're going to get into that with some other stories in the news this week. So tune into the Gross Room to see what this stuff actually looks like.
Head over to thegrossroom.com now to sign up.
So this next story I actually posted in my Instagram story this week because of quotes made by the judges, and one of which was, quote, "This woman would have been better delivering this baby in a bathroom at a gas station or a hut somewhere in Africa instead of in this hospital. Like, wow. I actually put it on my Instagram story that this judge must be listening to Mother Knows Death, because I say that about especially my one child birth, that I would have been safer if I was I usually say squatting by a tree. But
Well, I was thinking that immediately when seeing this headline, that somebody like you that went through a really horrific delivery with Lillian must feel a type of way about this and must feel some kind of joy that this family, not joy at what they went through, obviously, but that, justice is on their side and they're getting the largest settlement in Utah history over this botched delivery of their child. But of course, that doesn't make up for, the hardship their daughter's going to face the rest
yeah.
of her life.
And that's with us, like thank God there was no long-term effects on either of us as far as we know, right? But this poor family, and listen, like whenever I've talked to people about what happened to me when I had Lillian, especially, um a lot of people have similar stories, a lot. And but it's just by luck that you survive and you're fine, and then it kind of, like, all of what I went through was completely swept under the rug because I didn't die and my daughter didn't die or have any long-term health effects. Therefore, nobody knows about it.
Yeah, like, was
really.
there even an incident
Now,
report about what
who
went
knows?
down?
I doubt it. I doubt it. That's how it goes down. So, with this particular mother, I don't even understand how this happens, and maybe some of you that work in labor and delivery could help us with this, but apparently there were nurses working there that were trying to induce this woman who had just finished training. I don't really understand what that means exactly. Like, are they new grads from nursing school?
I think what they're trying to allude is that the nurses that were on staff that day had just barely graduated from school before getting hired there. They hadn't really gone through that much training, and the doctor overseeing them was not in the room because he had been sleeping in another room of the hospital while they were in charge of this woman and giving her drugs.
You know what really sucks for these parents? They were actually from Wyoming and they decided to take a little short trip before they had this baby. And which I don't think is a problem, because as a person living in America, at least, you kind of have this false sense of security, I guess I would say, that any hospital that you walk into would be able to deliver your baby if you were to go into labor early.
Well, that should be the case.
Like, the most common thing they do is deliver babies. It should be the bread and butter of their industry. It should, and there's always complications with deliveries and pregnancy that are sometimes out of the doctor's hands, for sure. But I can imagine that this family, these parents, beat themselves up every day over this because they just wanted to have like a little trip and ended up at a hospital. If they would have just stayed home, things might have been different for their entire life, because now their daughter has seizures so bad to the point where they have to sleep in bed with her every night because they're scared that she's going to die in her sleep. She's just not developing normally as she should be, and there was no indication that that would have happened prior to this botched delivery.
I mean, everything you read about this case just seems unacceptable. They're saying they gave her these labor-inducing drugs and that the baby's blood pressure was getting high, the mom was having a fever, and they just were kind of blowing it off. The baby was not born until the next day. This lawsuit's alluding that the mother clearly needed a C-section and they were blowing her off. I don't really understand, because I haven't been through this, how this process works. But, like, what is the timeline supposed to be? I'm assuming if there's any issues coming up at all, with the baby having issues or the mom having issues, they would just go straight to a C-section because it would be too dangerous to wait.
The only thing that I could think of is that there wasn't, I mean, there was a doctor there apparently. I don't know if the doctor was there the whole time, but there had to be a situation where listen, I don't know. I'm trying to find like an excuse, and I can't. I'm thinking, like, if there's a situation where there's just not a doctor available to do it, but even a general surgeon could if a baby or a mother's life's in danger, like someone knows how to get a baby out of out of a stomach via C-section. You're not in the middle of another third world country that doesn't have access to healthcare. Like it's just completely unacceptable.
I imagine that protocol in most cases is that there needs to be at least not one, but a few people on staff at all time that would know how to do this in case of an emergency.
Yeah, I mean, so the interesting thing is, so this is a couple notes I wanted to make about this particular case. So this hospital system has to pay them almost $1 billion,
Yeah.
okay, which is a lot of money. Isn't it kind of crazy that a hospital can pay out a lawsuit settlement of $1 billion and still be able to like remain a thing?
Well, I think in a normal case, yes, but they were saying later in this article that they're probably not even going to get half of this settlement because this medical center has filed for bankruptcy. So are they even going to see this money?
I don't know. It's just really and listen, like the money will be helpful for them, especially if she has to be monitored like this because of seizures. That maybe they could hire a person to come so they can get a good night's sleep or something, or go out on a date, or just like live their life for the rest of their life. All of the care she's going to require, but like it's it's still not changing anything. And it's scary to think this just happened in 2021.
This was in 2019 that the botched delivery happened, and they filed the lawsuit in 2021. So still
Okay.
all this time. And they still, there's a lot of stress to be on a family that went through this and has a kid that actively needs to be monitored all the time.
Yeah. And I mean, it is satisfying for the judge to say, like, to reiterate your feelings on how bad things were, but it's like none of it changes anything. And you hear about these things all the time, and you're just like, I don't even. 2019, it was before the pandemic. Because you could think like maybe it was during the craziness of COVID and there were short staffed and nobody wanted to come to work. Like, there's no excuse. There's just no excuse.
Going back to your comment though about, them having $1 million or almost $1 billion settlement and it not affecting a hospital, it's just, the greater conversation of the outrageous nature of healthcare in this country. Think about a couple weeks ago. I had a teeny tiny reaction to MRI contrast and we had to go to the emergency room. We were in the waiting room probably for an hour and 45 minutes. And how long were we back there? Not even 15 minutes?
Yeah, no.
And they said, go home and take a Benadryl, right? That was my whole entire emergency room visit. I just got a bill that I owe $350. And if I didn't have health insurance, it would have been like $4,000. Think about this.
Yeah,
For them to tell me
really
go take a Benadryl.
I really actually don't understand that because they didn't do anything to you except take your blood pressure. That's all they physically did to you.
Well, this is what I'm talking about. But this is why these hospitals have this much money. So if they do, in fact, get $1 billion settlement for malpractice, oh, whatever, because they're getting all this other money from people like me that they just said, go home and take a Benadryl. They didn't even give me a Benadryl.
They didn't. That's actually, it's really interesting because all of I mean, obviously we dealt with the people that checked us into the hospital or into the emergency room. So you dealt with like clerical staff, and then you were brought back to a triage nurse and they took your blood pressure and asked you some questions. And then that was it as far as medical intervention goes. And then a physician came and told you that you could leave. There was no testing done, nothing. No
This is
blood
what
work.
I'm talking about.
Nothing.
No
I was there
blood
the
work.
entire time.
They didn't give me a pill.
They were like, well, you seem fine.
$4,000 for a talk. Like, think about how
Yeah,
ridiculous
wow.
this is. Anyway, I just think because of things like that, they're getting hundreds, if not thousands, of dollars from people like me, And then when there's cases like this, in most cases, obviously this hospital ended up filing for bankruptcy, but I don't think this would be a ding to most hospitals.
Right?
Yeah.
It's just like, it's just so much money. I mean, and I know just from working in the hospital that the amount of waste. So it's just really, you would just think that kind of money would cripple. Well, this is another great part of the story. So the hospital got obtained by another hospital and now they changed their name.
Oh yeah, so nobody could trace it back that it happened
right?
there?
Like that's always alarming, I guess. If you live in an area and the hospitals are changing names and stuff, you might want to look into that.
This
That's
this is a question I want to pose to you though. Is the hospital liable for having bad hiring practices and bad protocols, or are the nurses and the sleeping doctor liable? Like, why not go after those people individually? Are you going after
well,
the
I think
hospital
they
because they have
did.
the
I think they
money?
were even trying to ask the people who were involved in the lawsuit. So each person in that, like for us as a PA in pathology, we in particular don't have to have malpractice insurance because we're covered underneath of the pathologist in the hospital. But
Okay,
in
that's
that
interesting.
situation, the nurses might not have to have their own insurance, although I'm not sure of that, but they definitely would fall underneath of the doctors that they work for who definitely have to have it. So the individuals are all insured as well as the institution, but you can't 100% because we don't know the whole story. And I know nurses that I'm best friends with that are constantly working short staffed because of the hospital's fault. So if something were to happen to one of their patients, like ultimately it would be their fault, but at the same time, it's like the hospital isn't supplying them with the amount of help they need. And if you have one nurse taking care of triple the patients that they should be, then like there's going to be mistakes made. So it could have been a situation like that. Like obviously this person won, so the hospital and the staff were in the wrong. We just don't know exactly like why was that doctor sleeping because he worked 3 days in a row without any help? Like, you know what I mean? Like things like that. So there might be more to the story that we just don't know.
Yeah, and hopefully this family does see some of that money. It's not like they went after them for no reason. They have lifelong medical bills now.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about this story as a little bit more fun, I would say.
All right, so in Nantucket a couple of years ago, they started testing the water to see if there was COVID spikes in the region, which is that even necessary in general? But since then, they've gone on to do other tests, including drug tests, and they see in this newer test that there are very high levels of cocaine in the water.
Yeah, it's actually really interesting. I've been to Nantucket, so I could speak about this a little bit. I thought it was very cool. Like it's always cool to have to put your car onto a ferry and go somewhere. Um and I'm just trying to think actually when we went there. I don't even know. I feel like we did that for Martha's Vineyard, but I think for Nantucket we just took the ferry over and we rented a car for the day. Cuz I don't even know if you can bring your car there or maybe you have to reserve it. I don't really remember. But dude, Nantucket is like a whole different world as far as like compared to the Jersey Shore and stuff.
Well,
It's
of
like
course.
mucho money. It's beautiful. It's just like a whole different vibe of anything that we've seen in New Jersey at least for sure. And obviously like I felt completely out of place with my family. Like everybody there is super just like very white and clean cut and their vineyard vine shirts and their Lily Pulitzer outfits and then like we just don't necessarily fit that mold, so we felt very like okay, this isn't cool. We actually so we went to visit the we go to look at lighthouses all the time and we met like Peter Benchley's nephew, like ran the lighthouse there. He was really cool actually though. So that was my cool part of Nantucket, but I could see it's like it seems like it's like very snobby, very clicky, very money, and like and with that comes cocaine. And apparently very good cocaine because the water the water levels are showing high levels of cocaine, but very low levels of things like fentanyl and stuff that you would find in like when people aren't getting good shit.
No,
And
so they're
these
getting
people
the
are
pure
getting
shit.
they're getting very pure cocaine. And 50% higher levels in Nantucket water than the rest of the water around the United States that gets treated. So it's really really interesting. And there's low levels of like trashier drugs like meth and like things
Trank.
yeah, trank, stuff like that. So it's just like it's cool because they said, wait, hold on, let me look at this really quick because this is interesting. So it says that, so let me say how many people live there. There's 14 to 15,000 residents there all year, and but they said they could get up to 80,000
Wow.
visitors. But they're saying that the water, it appears that the water is that they tested is coming from a almost 3/4 of the homes on the island. Okay, so they're trying to say that they're able to test. This is like, it's kind of weird because it seems like an invasion of privacy, but overall they can't tell whose house it's coming from, but they can test like do like a regional drug test almost. So of the water of 3/4 of the island, there's these high levels of cocaine from like personal use from homes. So they're either rentals or they're people that live there, but it's, you know, when I went and visited, I didn't sleep over. There's a lot of people that just, because you could take the ferry, you just go for a couple hours and then you leave. So this is specific to people that are either living there or there for the summer or they're renting, but it's coming from the houses.
It is just
It's
such
just
an
it's
interesting thing.
interesting, and they can't, like, they're saying they're not invading privacy because they can't pinpoint it to whose house it is. It's just like a generalized pool of water. But it's cool. It's cool in the sense scientifically because let's say you came to our town in New Jersey, you would definitely find a different composition of drugs in the water here
Absolutely.
as opposed to there, and then other place, you know what I mean, like different places. It's just it's something that's kind of, I don't know, I just think it's like it's kind of interesting.
Did you also see this cool fact that they were saying before a drug raid, most of the time they will shut the water off so that whoever's in the house like can't flush any drugs they have.
Like Lorena Bracco in Goodfellas.
Yeah, like they can't do it at all. They just have to, whatever they put down the toilet, they'll be able to get, so they can't get away with
Yeah,
anything.
so it was interesting because they were saying like sometimes the water could have, so there was the biggest cocaine drug bust recently in Nantucket where this guy had 5.5 pounds of cocaine, right? So let's say that guy didn't get caught with that and he flushed it down the toilet, right? Well, obviously the water is going to have a high concentration of cocaine. So they were saying that that could affect it sometimes, but they were saying that they don't think that's the case in this case because it was spread out over such a long period of time that it didn't seem like, okay, the levels were this and then all of a sudden one day after a drug bust it was like this high and now they went back to this. It's been like high the whole time. And it's just interesting to think about like what groups of people use drugs, and it's just very telling of that whole entire scene that I witnessed there. Although I will say I ate at this really crazy, it was like a weird restaurant. It was kind of like outside on a lawn. And I had like it was the best food. It was so good.
Well, it better be for what it costs to go visit over there.
It was just like a lobster roll situation, like all of this like super fresh seafood and stuff. But it was so awkward because Gabe and I were like sitting. It was like a green field and all of these like white umbrellas, and we're sitting there at a table like amongst all of these people.
And you're wearing all black, looking like a beach goth.
But let me tell you that the Benchley dude, I don't remember his first name, and I feel really rude even saying that, but he was so awesome. Like, we went to the lighthouse. He like brought us there and talked to Gabe for like an hour, and he was just so cool. And he's been like, obviously, like his family is in that whole, you know, Cape Cod island situation because of Jaws and everything like that. Like they lived there, and he was like super cool, but some of the other people were like yeah, it felt like Julia Roberts in Pretty Woman when they're like, we don't have anything for you here. Try Sears.
I just read this really good book. It's a fiction book called The Wedding People, and it's set in a similar climate like that, but the narrator of the story is going through just how like douchey the area is, and she's like, they even have a coconut pillow at this hotel. And then I'm like, I kind of want that. I don't know.
Yeah,
I do think that
it
book's
was
good.
definitely like that. Like we stuck out like a sore thumb. Like, listen, I would I would love to. I mean, it was beautiful. Like the hydrangea and the houses, and we just drove around, and it just was so nice. I mean, I see why people want to go there and do cocaine. To be honest.
I just see cocaine as such like an 80s drug. I'm like, who does it anymore? And especially who does it with fentanyl going around. But I guess if you had enough money, that's not a concern for you because there was not very high fentanyl levels in the water. So, an
Yeah,
interesting,
I never got cocaine either, but to each his own.
an interesting observation. Okay, so this last story we have today, this listener from the UK sent this in and said it's not really a huge story over there, which I can't believe because every week we get super disturbing stories, and I don't want to say like some are worse than the others, but this is definitely up there. So, back in 2021, this woman's baby died at 3 weeks old due to brain damage, and a loved one suggested using this company called Florey's Army, which specialized in baby loss support and funerals. So, this company was set up by this woman, Amy Upton, in 2017 after her daughter was stillborn. They offer free handprints, photographs, baby clothing, and dedicated funeral services for babies. So, this child who passed away was picked up by somebody on behalf of Florey's Army. The next day, the mom goes to visit and is horrified to see that her dead child is propped up in a baby bouncer, quote, watching cartoons with this woman that founded this funeral company.
Yeah, I mean, this shit is weird. Listen, I'm going to say this. I know a couple people throughout my life that have either had a stillborn or lost a baby. Either I know them directly or indirectly through other people, and the reaction that diff- everyone's reaction to death is different, and we know this even when adults die and people that are 90 years old die. Everybody's reaction's different. And I know of a couple of people who have had a baby die or a stillborn, and they're just like, this sucks, but they move on with life, and they're just kind of, going on as normal. And then others that like just completely go off the deep end and never really, I don't want to say anybody ever gets over it, but never is still in that moment of like the intensity of the new death, and not 5 years later just like completely detached from reality in a way of like things moving on, right?
Yeah.
And not judging anyone, because I can't imagine that, and I would probably be more in that category if it happened to me, for sure. But so this lady had a stillborn and started this organization for people that lost babies, which is great. A lot of times when people have a huge loss like that, they start some kind of organization to not only help them but to help other people too. And I don't know what happened, but it appears there had been a lot of complaints over the years, and this woman had a very unusual attachment to dead babies, and had it in a freaking bouncer watching PJ Masks, a dead baby. Like,
Well, not
and
only
even the mother of that dead baby was like, this is freaking weird. This is weird.
It's weird, and then she's looking around the room and she sees another dead child on the couch, and then there's just like animals all over the house too. So you're first of all going through the trauma of just having lost a baby, and then you're trying to do anything you can to grieve it, give this child some respectful burial of sorts, and you walk into this lady's house and see your
And
kid
she's like,
propped up like
come
she's not
sit
even
down
dead.
and watch PJ Masks with us. It was like that. Like, that's what happened. She didn't even, it wasn't like she was trying to hide it. She didn't think it was weird.
She didn't think it was weird at all.
Yeah. And
There's
that's like a detachment from reality. There's something mentally going on there.
And
So,
who's the other dead child on the couch?
well, probably someone else that she was dealing with from another hospital. So the question comes up because, and this is the UK, so I don't know how they do things over there, but as far as here goes, like, you can't just go to the hospital and pick up a dead body. We wouldn't release the body unless it was to a funeral director or to the medical examiner's office, or to So who is this? What's the name of her organization?
It's Florrie's Army, which in my head, her name's Amy, and I keep seeing Amy and Army, and I know at some point I'm going to mispronounce it. But the company's called Florrie's Army because I think her daughter that was stillborn's name was Florence.
So even if there's organizations that do things like that in America, they wouldn't release the body to that person. They would release it to a funeral home and then go from there. So when they pulled the records, it seems as if she had some kind of affiliation with some funeral home because they did release the body to a licensed funeral director. So I don't know what's going on with that relationship, but apparently in the UK, the funeral businesses in general aren't very regulated. So there are like regulatory agencies that oversee funeral homes that people can join, I guess. And they have standards that if you're going to be in their association, you have to follow these standards. But you don't have to be in one of those associations to have a funeral business. I think one of the only requirements is to have some kind of a storage for a cold storage to prevent decomposition, which it appears that this woman had some sort of cold storage or some kind of way to keep the body cold. So,
I don't know if she was registered with any of those entities, though.
It doesn't seem like she was, but that's not illegal in the UK.
No, it's not. And then another interesting thing our listener sent in was that this organization has a Facebook page where this woman is posting photos of at least her dead child back from 2017. And I can't believe those things don't get flagged. I mean, I guess if you're seeing it as a grieving thing.
People that have stillborns and stuff post their dead kids all the time. I see it all the time. And that's fine if that's what people want to do. If she wants to do that with her own kids, she can. That's fine. She shouldn't do it with other people's kids for sure, especially. This is the thing I guess from a consumer standpoint in the UK, you have a stillborn, you're incredibly upset. You do some Google searches and come across an organization like that. How is the regular average person going to know that they're not like you would just assume that the country or the state that you're living in is overseeing things like this. And they're not.
Well, I guess where I'm at right now is, what we've talked about with all these airplane accidents too. Have these things just been going on all the time and they're more sensationalized as of late with social media? The BBC just did an investigation, and this is kind of why all this information is just coming out now, even though this happened a few years ago. We just talked about that story last week too, with that other funeral home in Colorado where they had bodies hidden behind a door. And by the way, that guy stepped down. He resigned as the coroner, as he should have. He should have been fired.
Exactly. They shouldn't even have gave him that opportunity because honestly, like, I don't know how that works in that particular jurisdiction, but assuming that would be a pensionable job.
Well, yes.
So he's going to be able to just retire and get his pension now? Like,
well,
no, the people that live there really need to fight that because that's bullshit, because that's taxpayer money. That's bullshit.
Yeah, I'm just wondering exactly what prompted the BBC to just investigate this now. Have they been doing it for years? Did they watch The Mortician and see what was going on with David Sconce,
So this particular organization for these dead babies has been, they've had complaints before. I don't know what the complaints are.
But they said only 2 that were investigated by police and they didn't find any wrongdoing.
But the hospital that's affiliated with this is saying that they aren't affiliated with her. So they said she's not allowed anymore, it seems, to go to the maternity floors.
Unless she's a patient.
But she was before.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. And like from a hospital perspective, you're like, okay, there's this outside organization that comes in and helps mothers deal with dead babies. Like, of course, like, why wouldn't you let them in, right? Like,
of course, because it's an unfathomable tragedy, so you want to do anything as possible to provide the family with resources to help them get through it. You don't think this lady's like taking their kid home and like watching cartoons and acting like it's normal.
I have no idea. It is just really, it's really bizarre, and I just, the whole entire thing is bizarre. But I guess this mother assumed, there's a lot of assuming in the world. This is why people you assume that this is a funeral home that's picking up the kids, so that's what she did. And
Well,
that's the problem when you're like, you want to say, okay, make sure you're using an accredited funeral home in the UK by these organizations, but like average people just don't think about that, especially if a death comes unexpected.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to say. There's a level of shock, and like, is your first priority when you've just lost a child being like, let me make sure this funeral home is accredited? You're
Yeah.
not in your right senses.
Average people just wouldn't even know to do that. You just think, oh, they say they're a funeral home. Let's see.
No. So, I mean, this Facebook page was posting as of July 29th. I don't know if the services are going to continue or what's going to happen, but I just think it's really disturbing, and I just hope the whole thing gets shut down, honestly, because I think if she was really trying to do the right thing, it's just gone so far south at this point that you maybe need to like take a step back and reevaluate the goals of your business and how you're handling it.
Do you remember that one case, that high profile death dissection we did in the gross room about that guy that was like digging up dead children and stuffing them and making them dolls and like kind of doing a similar, not obviously she wasn't, well, I don't know if she was embalming them. I mean, she had to do something or else they would have been decomposing, but like propping them up and like having them watch TV with him and stuff. It was so weird.
Well, yeah, that was hands down one of the worst ones we've ever done because there's a million pictures associated with it too, and just
it's
looking
so
at those made me
that's
so
that's
sick.
automatically what I thought of though, is like thinking about like a dead child propped up as a doll. Like what? Like it's so bizarre.
It's really weird. Okay, let's move on to questions of the week. Every Friday on the @MotherKnowsDeath Instagram account, you can head over to our story, ask us whatever you want. Do families have to pay for autopsies done against their wishes, like in investigations, etc.?
No, they don't. The only time that a family would have to pay for an autopsy, even really, I mean, the couple hospitals that I worked at and the ones that I interned at as well, if you died in the hospital and you wanted an autopsy, they were free because that was a service that, number one, the hospital provides, but number two, we need bodies for training for medical students and for pathology residents. So that the only time that we've done autopsies that people have had to pay for is if someone would call the hospital and say they want to do a private autopsy, which means maybe the body got sent to the medical examiner's office and the medical examiner said, we're not going to do an autopsy, we don't think it's necessary, and the family's like, no, this is suspicious, I want it done, then you would have to pay for it, for a private autopsy. And sometimes even if you have an autopsy and you want to do like a second autopsy or a second review, you would pay for that as well. But we actually had a rule because we worked in an academic center, and like I said, we just needed bodies to do dissections on for the residents. We would actually say, even if a person didn't die in the hospital, if they were ever a patient of our whole entire medical institute, that we would do the autopsy for free.
Where do private autopsies get done? Like if you were to hire, because didn't they have Dr. Bodden do Epstein's? Like where would that be performed?
So it sometimes, like, since he worked as the New York medical examiner, sometimes like if he's still in good relations with them, they would just let him come in after hours. Sometimes it's done at a funeral home. Oftentimes it's done at a funeral home because they have the setup to do it. And usually like the few people, I know a couple of people that have done like autopsy, like private autopsies like that. And like my friend Frank that just died, he had like his own kit that he would bring with him that had a bone saw and scalpel blades and things like that, because the funeral home isn't going to have the exact tools that we would use for an autopsy. They have, I'm sure I could get by with, if you have a scalpel blade, technically you could do an autopsy, but like you want your tools to be a little bit more comfortable. So typically, sometimes you would rent out space maybe in a funeral home or something like that. And we've had private autopsies done at the hospital too, that external bodies would come out and we would do them there.
Okay. All right, 2. Are autopsies performed differently if a body is obese compared to average weight?
I would say like a little bit. We still do the same procedure, but sometimes it's just a lot harder. Obviously, if a person's body is bigger, I've I always talk about this one case I had of a person that was considered to be super obese, which was over 500 pounds and had died after surgery. And the gurney that this body was on was so big it didn't fit into our morgue. So I had to cut in the refrigerator. And it was terrible because it's just hard to work when you're cold. Your hands don't bend right and um like that. But it's pretty much the same. It's just a lot messier because there's a lot of fat in the way, but I mean, you're still going to look at all of the same stuff you look at every single body. It's just a little bit more difficult for us to do.
Okay, last. For Nicole, do you love your Kybella now after a few years?
Kybella is deoxycholic acid, and this is something that's naturally found in the body, but for the Kybella, they made it synthetic, but it's something that would be created in the liver, stored in the gallbladder to break down fat after you eat a meal. So if you eat a cheeseburger, that acid naturally in your body comes and squirts out of your gallbladder into your small bowel and helps break down the fat. So they thought like, hey, let's take this technology and try to break down fat by injecting it into people. And it's FDA approved and everything like that. And Dr. Dimitri did it on me. I'm actually going to see him today to try to get my Botox before CrimeCon. But anyway, so I could talk to him more about that because he might want to come on and actually talk about it. It's interesting. So anyway, when I got it, I was like 10 pounds heavier or lighter than I am now. So now that I've gained 10 pounds, usually I see it like a lot in my face, like my chin gets fatter, and I feel like it hasn't gotten fatter like it typically would have if I fluctuated in weight. So I think overall it's good. Um I've been happy with it. I think that it worked because like when I got it done, I was like I said 10 pounds lighter, and also God, I feel like I got that done before the pandemic. So I was younger too. And so
Maybe that's what I need.
I think yeah, well you would hate it. So let me tell you the worst part of it was painful, like very very painful. Not It was like the weirdest thing because he did tell me it was going to hurt, and I believe that he did inject me with lidocaine, which they wouldn't typically do with like Botox or something. And he gave it to me and it was fine. But then when I went in the car right from leaving his office, it hurt so, so, so bad. Like, I don't know exactly what causes the pain like that, but like, I I was borderline, like, if I had a Percocet or something right now, I would take it. Like, it hurt that bad. And I think I have a pretty high tolerance for pain. And I didn't. Luckily, I just had, luckily I had the, Motrin 800, whatever, the
Not
the
enough people
ibuprofen.
talk about how awesome ibuprofen 800 is.
No, but like it didn't. The reason that I say that I would have taken a pain pill if I had one was because that didn't even touch it. Like
Wow.
it was like a weird burning, and also like if you want to get it done, I'm just trying to tell you the negatives of it because I think the results overall are good. If you want to get it done, you need to make sure that you have nothing to do for like almost a week because I didn't really realize that. And I also swell up more than the average person, I think. But remember, I went to like Terrain with Laura a couple, like I think 2 whole days later. It was like her birthday or something. And like I had to wear a scarf around my neck like Jackie O because I'm serious. Like I looked like a frog. Like I gotta find the picture actually because it's like hilarious. I look like I can't even recreate how I looked. It was terrible.
Is it like when you open your
It was like
your
a
camera by
rippled
accident?
what?
Is it like when you open your camera by
Oh,
accident
but
when
like
you're laying
times
on the
20.
couch?
It was like this big like frog. Like I just feel like I looked like a bullfrog. Like I don't know how else to explain. I had like boobs and like a chin. Like there was no like neck definition whatsoever. It was the weirdest thing. But then the swelling went down and it was fine, but I just was like, "Oh my god, like I really you know, like if you go get a facelift, you're like, okay, I got to be like missing for a week or two. But I just didn't think that way before I went there. And then I had plans with Laura and it was her birthday and stuff. And I'm like, I would feel like a jerk not going to lunch with her because of a cosmetic procedure. Right. But it was outrageous. But overall, it was good. And they do it in like other parts of your body too. Like you can, especially if you're one of those fortunate girls that are just like pretty skinny and you just have like a little tiny glob of fat on your abdomen, like they can inject it in your abdomen too, and it's been shown to show results. So
All right. Well, on that note, we will see you guys in only a couple of days.
I'll
at
try to find the
CrimeCon.
picture and I'll put it
We'll
I
put it
don't
on
know.
Instagram.
I don't know if I want to put it on Instagram. It's terrible.
Maybe I'll
We'll
flash
see.
it up
Maybe-
really quick.
We'll see, yeah. I gotta find it though, but yeah, it was. I have to figure out when I got it done, and I'll look for it in my phone. But it was funny, and I think that the picture that I took was like 2 whole days after I had it done, so you could imagine like how bad it was. But all right,
All right. Well, we'll see you at CrimeCon in a couple days. We're really excited.
yeah,
And
we're so excited.
if you have a review for us, please leave it on Apple or Spotify. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and send us stories to stories@motherknowsdeath.com.
See you guys tomorrow. Thank you for listening to Mother Knows Death. As a reminder, my training is as a pathologist assistant. I have a master's level education and specialize in anatomy and pathology education. I am not a doctor and I have not diagnosed or treated anyone, dead or alive, without the assistance of a licensed medical doctor. This show, my website, and social media accounts are designed to educate and inform people based on my experience working in pathology so they can make healthier decisions regarding their life and well-being. Always remember that science is changing every day and the opinions expressed in this episode are based on my knowledge of those subjects at the time of publication. If you are having a medical problem, have a medical question, or are having a medical emergency, please contact your physician or visit an urgent care center, emergency room, or hospital. Please rate, review, and subscribe to Mother Knows Death on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or anywhere you get podcasts. Thanks.